So I guess it's time to start. Welcome to our post-lunch slot of talks. And I was asked to introduce next speakers, but probably I don't need to introduce them because they're often frequent guests on this conference. It's Charlie Hall, who's gonna tell you the story about how to juggle with merchandising rules and to do different tricks to make it work. So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So, yes, welcome back after lunch. I shall attempt to stop you falling asleep after your large lunch. I'll do my best. And thank you, Rani, for inviting me to speak. I always like coming to this conference. It's probably the only place you can talk about e-commerce search in this much depth. I think that's quite a unique thing. So, for those of you who don't know me, and as Roman just says, I do tend to turn up again and again. I've been doing search for over 25 years, working with companies large and small, and a lot of e-commerce companies as well. I've run conferences, I write, I blog, I present, and I co-wrote a book. And even though I'm neutral on technology choice, I'm also happy to be a Vespa partner and an open search ambassador. There's a few links there if you'd like. I also run a worldwide map of search meetups, if you'd like to check that out and go to a search meetup. Great fun places. So, a very brief plug. I'm also helping the Vespa team run the first Vespa conference in London on September the 10th. There's a QR code there or some flyers at the front there which give you a 20% discount on tickets. We'd love to see you there. We've got some great people speaking, and there's also training the day before. And we'll have some other events during the week as well. So, let's start off thinking about what searchandizing actually is. And the way I look at it is it's modifying search results and ranking for business reasons, whatever those business reasons are. So we know that standard search algorithms match with keywords or vectors or both. And then we have ranking based on the scores from those algorithms and also maybe some external factors, let's say, I don't know, global product popularity or something like this. And then users sort, they filter, they look at different aspects, they facet. But the order of search results and what's actually there is neutral from a business perspective. Now, most businesses aren't neutral. They have certain things they'd like to do with search results to help sell things. And so this is where we combine search and that merchandising activity a business needs to do, and we come up with the word searchandizing. So let's think about those business reasons, what they might be. Now, the central problem with search, as we all know, is users don't quite use the same terms to describe something as you have in your product catalog. So what can we do to translate between one and the other? Also, sadly, our product data quality isn't always as good as it could be. So maybe some of those results that we know are good matches, we need to promote them, even though they don't match very well with our search algorithms. We might have an agreement with a supplier. There might be some money involved in this, where their product should probably appear a little higher than their other products, similar products from other suppliers. But we also have our domain knowledge. If we're selling shoes, we know a lot about shoes. We know what certain types of shoes are, what are better for kids, what are better for people running, this kind of thing. So it tells us that this is a better result than this other result. Maybe we need to do something there. Another reason might be we've got a sale on, or we've got, say, it's Christmas and we're doing some kind of special Christmas promotion, and we want to push some of the products higher up the list. Another reason might be we don't actually carry the brand the users typed in. So they've typed in Nike. We don't actually carry Nike, but we do have Adidas, so maybe we could show those, because at least they're trainers or sneakers. So maybe we want to promote that alternative brand. And there are more business reasons than this. This is just a sample. And the last one, of course, which a lot of you will be familiar with, is an executive has found a broken query. And yes, it's the rise of the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. And this invariably happens on a Sunday night. They've typed in a query that has never been used by any other user in the history of the universe. And then you have that email in your inbox, first thing Monday morning, saying, drop everything, fix this, our search is broken. There are ways to kind of fight this off, but it's never going to completely go away. Yeah, and we have to do something about that. So here are some more practical examples. So we've got the accessories problem. So you search for laptops, and all you get is laptop power supplies, laptop sleeves, this kind of thing. And we can fix that by boosting results that are actually in the right category. They've typed laptop. We're pretty sure they want a laptop and not a laptop sleeve. So we're going to move actual laptops in that category higher up the list. Maybe there's no results at all. So we could add synonyms. We're, again, addressing that problem of translating the user's language into our product language. Or perhaps we want to provide those alternative brands. Functional queries. These are the sort of things, so, where's your office location? What's your returns policy? What's delivery? These are things that you can't really answer with a product or a list of products, but you maybe want to redirect people to a particular page. And then we got those promotions and favorite suppliers. And now here we can boost results matching certain field values or category values. Something's on sale or comes from one of our favored suppliers who are giving us lots of money. Now, the advantages of this technique are that generally the rules we're going to create to do these various actions are triggered only by one query or maybe a limited pattern. So there's a low risk of impact across other queries. We're fixing one problem. We're not fixing everything. Most systems with Searchandizing let you fix things in production. You can literally fix a problem in minutes, and that's an extremely powerful thing to be able to do. There's no re-indexing. You don't have to come up with a new algorithm and then test it for weeks and weeks. You can fix something today, now, within minutes. Another really useful effect is it reduces the load on the search team. So if you get some other people in the business to help you build these rules, help you do Searchandizing, then the search team doesn't have to deal with every single email that comes in and says this one query is broken. They can help with things. Now, actually, maybe the search team isn't the best place to have people who really understand the products and what customers are searching for, what a good result is. Maybe other people might understand that better. And I think what it does is it focuses on the specific. Your data, your users, your world is unique. Even your competitors will have a slightly different way of looking at things. No out-of-the-box algorithm, search algorithm or model, will entirely fit your world. I mean, yes, you can fine-tune models. That's expensive, takes time, but this is a way of kind of customizing search to fit your view of the world. So how do we actually do it? Well, we're creating a set of business rules, and these modify a query in some way. And as I said, each rule triggers on a particular query or pattern. It's not a global fix. It's not like an index time synonym or a query time full field boost. It's something that's very specific to that query. And we can do things like we can add boosts, and importantly, not just positive boosts, but negative boosts. We can bury results that don't really match very well the user's intent. We can remove or replace words. Sometimes there's unhelpful words in queries that cause weird things. Or it can be synonyms. We can replace words with different brands. We can split or combine words. This is particularly useful for certain languages like German or Dutch. I always laugh about the fact that in German you don't invent a new word, you just glue lots of other old words together. But this is a problem for search because sometimes people split words up in different ways. This happened in other languages as well, different ways of expressing something with a space in between or not. We can add filters. We can spot something in the query. With our rule can say, well, if they've said shoes, then let's just add that as a filter. And we can do those redirects to a fixed page for informational queries or even just category pages. If they type shoes, do we have any idea what sort of shoes they want? How about we go to the shoes sort of subcategory page that's got a bit of description of what shoes are? There's a lovely example of this on Screwfix, which is a UK company selling sort of tools. And you type screwdriver. Is that a power screwdriver? Is that a Phillips screwdriver? Is it a flathead screwdriver? Is it a posi-drive screwdriver? Posi-drive and Phillips are actually different things. So you get a lovely page with little pictures of the types of screwdriver, and you can then pick the one you actually meant. You didn't tell the search engine. So this is an example of a rule from Quirky, co-created by our wonderful host, Mr. René Kriegler. And you can see how this is working. So we've got the query personal computer, and we're going to add a couple of synonyms, PC and desktop computer. And And then we don't want results that are about personal computer software, so we're going to down boost, we're going to bury anything that has software. So you can see how it works. So it's a big lump of text, but there is a much easier way of dealing with this with a SMUI user interface that lets you create the rules in a more intuitive way. So let's do it. We're ready. We've got a plan. We know what business rules we want to put in. Let's get going. So our search architecture is pretty simple. We can write a quick rules framework. Vibe code it today. Anyone should be able to suggest and add a rule. We want everyone to be able to have input into this. And since every rule only affects one query, there's probably not a great need for testing. We can just try on production. If it fixes the problem, that's great. We can put the rules in a spreadsheet. That sounds fine. Rules are easy to write. People understand how they're doing. We don't need a lot of documentation. Someone can create a rule to try and fix something, and there'll only ever be a few rules. It'll all be fine. So a quick visual demonstration. Easy. Now, time passes. And we're maybe 5 years later. Thousands of rules exist. We don't know who created them or why. Some of the rules conflict with each other. Some of the people who wrote the rules have left the company, never to be seen again. The spreadsheet is, well, by large, when you try and send it by email, you get that message saying, perhaps this shouldn't be an attachment. We can't really tell when a search result is there because a rule is fired. We don't really know how rules interact with everything else, because in the meantime, we've got all kind of other things. We've got index times synonyms, we've got automatic filtering, we've got vector search. All of this stuff, these new modules, they all have to interact with rules somehow. And the rules framework we vibe coded is old, unmaintained, and doesn't work with the latest version of the search engine that people keep telling us we should upgrade to. So yes, I think this is where we are too much searchandizing. I will say that none of this is based exactly on situations I have seen, but I have seen some terrible things. And this is just synthesized from various situations I've seen where searchandizing has gone a bit wild. You've got stuff in there from 2013. You've got ridiculously complex rules that kind of recurse and don't really do much, but they're still there. You've got rules for BlackBerries, and who's had a BlackBerry for a decade? But now there's a new product that's got a BlackBerry color, and it's affecting that. So I can tell you maybe later some of the horrors I have seen. Yes, I'm only 25. You can see by the. So yeah, again, visual demonstration. Yeah.
Now I'm included. Now you're using quadrant.
So, how can we do better? And I'm a great fan of process. I think a lot of problems in search aren't really technology, they're people and process. I think you'll probably be familiar with that. So I've got a few good practice tips, and I hope you agree with them, but come up with some more later maybe. Use an existing framework for searchandizing, don't build your own. We have Quirky and SMUI, open source, used by some very big players. It's been evolving for years. Works with Solr, works with Elasticsearch, works with OpenSearch. In fact, I hear it's going to work a lot better with OpenSearch soon. There's even an unplugged version, which in theory would work with any search engine. Elastic have written a really interesting series of blogs on what they call governed search patterns. They're calling this practice of search governance. The technology they demonstrate in that is only available to their consulting customers. Vespa, there's some Vespa folks here. Vespa has a rules framework. And in fact, all the commercial engines tend to have this kind of mechanism. And I believe the inspiration for Quirky was people migrating away from some of those commercial engines to open source, and there wasn't an equivalent in the open source world. So it's a pretty standard feature, but don't write your own. Create a proper process. So when somebody is inspired to think a rule might fix something, that searchandizing is the thing to do, you should have a checklist. You should have a list of questions. Is this a real user query? Coming back to the Hippo example, you can check your query logs. Has anyone done this in the last year? Who can create a rule? Who's allowed to do it and under what conditions? What's the likely impact? You should be able to guess how many, what's the sort of traffic this is going to impact and what it's actually going to do. Who's it going to make happy? Who might it make a little grumpy? Should the rule be permanent? Is this something that will always be there? Or is it like the BlackBerry example that it's going to expire just because the world has changed? Or maybe it's a seasonal thing? Or maybe you should just try it for a bit and then let it tail off? Is there a better solution? I mean, searchandizing is not always the only answer. But you have to ask these questions. And again, if you've got access to the right data, you can then use that to fight off people who think this is definitely the right answer and maybe reduce the impact of those hippos. But you should know from your analytics, really, when things are working, when things aren't. Document every rule properly. I'm a great fan of documentation. I know it's a common failing. What does a rule actually fix? What are some examples of the queries it's going to fix? Who created it and why? How was it tested? Is there any kind of expiry date? This should be marked. We're going to look at this again in some time. And that leads on to housekeeping. You should review these old rules periodically. Remove ones that aren't used. You can tell if they're not fired, maybe. See if they're irrelevant. And that leads on to logging and explainability. You should be able to see when a rule is triggered. I know Quirky has a logging framework, so you can see where rules come through in some search results, and the others should have something like this as well. Maybe some dashboards showing how much of your traffic is affected by rules and what the impact of that is. Another powerful technique is have some kind of debug product listing page that shows why a result is there. And this is generally a good principle for search anyway. If you can't explain why a certain result has turned up, you don't know whether it's from vector search or keyword search or a rule or a promotion or a pinned result, then you need to be able to see that. So these are some ideas for that. Testing. Now this is a bit of a funny one. I mean, you don't want to restrict the ability to do these things very quickly and fix things very quickly, but you do need to do some testing. So at least some known user queries. If you can do offline test, then do so, see what impact it has on your metrics, but it shouldn't be a burden. And you shouldn't need an A/B test. You're fixing just one query, remember. It shouldn't have a massive impact on all of your traffic, unless you do something completely crazy. So who should do it in the organization? We've got our search product managers or owners. They kind of sit between the business and the search team. They probably have access to good analytics to see what's working and what isn't. They may not have domain knowledge, depends maybe how long they've been at the organization. Sometimes people turn up as just product managers or product owners. They haven't done search before, or they've not been in that the business sector before. Then we've got category managers, people maybe closer to the customer. They know their customers, and they know their products. They might be country managers as well. They may need some training. They may not be so technical. They may need to understand how search works. It's amazing how seldom people who normally work in search have never been told how the search engine actually works. It does help to train people. A process is important here to make sure they can do what they should do and not what they shouldn't do. And then we've got the search engineers. They, frankly, should be working on the core algorithm instead. We don't want to distract them. They're probably already very busy, and they're even less likely to have that domain knowledge. Just because you work for a company selling shoes does not mean that you know lots and lots about shoes. My favourite, I think, is this kind of level. These people, close to the customer, understanding their sector. They're the French manager for, again, clothing, or they're the Belgian manager for bearings. I don't know, but they know their customers. They know what people are looking for. They know their product set. So let's have a look at an example from the real world. And I'm very happy to thank the people at Rubix who talked to me a couple of weeks ago about how they do searchandizing. Thank you, Sean, Brigitte, and Charlene. So Rubix have had searchandizing in production for over 5 years. Rubix do industrial supply and maintenance items across Europe. The rules come from promotions created by the category managers. They have trading reports showing what queries are underperforming. They have a zero results report. And they have a LLM as a judge system showing which sets of results for particular queries are giving low relevance. Then they have this checklist. The questions like, will this affect one or all customers? Is it actually a problem Searchandizing should fix and not just the fact there's no stock of that thing? Is the query real? But there is a balance between this fine-tuning and ongoing maintenance. If we create 17 more rules, someone's going to look after those, so maybe we shouldn't. There's a bit of a balance here. But Searchandizing is sometimes the shortest quick-term fix, even if it's not maybe the best solution, it's the quick solution. They have internal guidance written based on training that was given by Open Source Connections and on their own Solr setup and how their fields are set up, so they know what they can influence and how. They use SMUI and Quirky, and here's some stats. They've got about 700 to 1,000 rules per territory. Rules can be pushed straight to production, fixing those issues in minutes, and there are some tags on rules, which SMUI allows, so you can put things in collections called summer or winter and then kind of turn them off or whatever if it's not that season. But there are some issues. Everyone's got issues, things that could be done better. Some of the commercial engines, they can fix particular results at particular positions. So put this at position 3, but you can't do that with boosting. It'd be nice to be able to test a bit more deeply. It's often just a time constraint. There are sometimes queries with multiple meanings, and they can have cause issues, and you might have issues across categories. You fix a particular query for this category, but there's something you didn't know about in another category that's impacted. And just an understanding that with the best intentions, you can still break things, and to be prepared for that and able to roll back. There's no current process for expiring rules, although there are those seasonal tags. And there's no full-time Searchandizer, so they have limited time to fix things. And this is a particular thing. Some customers have their own catalog, they see a different view of the products to other people, but the rules work the same for everyone. So it might be nice to be able to have a rule per customer, a rule set per customer. But I'm sure they're working on all these things. They're a great team. Things Rubik's have learned, you can only do what you can. And this is important. This is no guarantee of commercial success. Just because you're making people a bit happier, reducing friction, giving better results, you can't force them to buy something. Relevance is very subjective. As we know, each stakeholder may have a very different view. So there may be arguments about whether this is the best result or not. But having a rules framework has made the process of Searchandizing well known in the company because it's fixed things and it's kind of helped to the adoption. This is an interesting one. One bad result for one person's query can be interpreted as the website is broken, even though they've not done anything else to see if anything else is broken, and you can fix that very quickly. And this one I like, the last one, that Searchandizing brings people together for conversations about what is the best way to fix something, how to improve search, and there will always be compromises, there'll always be edge cases, there'll always be things you have to discuss and say, make a judgment about what's the best thing to do. And there's a great case study on how this was all set up back in the day on OSC's website. One of my favourite quotes from, I think it was Sean at a previous MICES, and it came from one of their category managers who said when this system was introduced, "You've given us hope," which I just thought was lovely. So, takeaways. Searchandizing is a powerful way to fix those bad queries in minutes, but without that process, you can create more problems. Don't get yourself in a pickle. Use the process to get those data-driven arguments for what should be fixed and what shouldn't be fixed and how. Make sure you know when it's happening, things like logging. Try and use an established platform, and then use it as a tool to really get the business side and the technical side talking about how to improve search, because it is a shared journey, and it should be a collaborative process. So just a few links here. They'll be in the slides when they're, I've got a bit about Quirky, Elastic's tools, Sean's presentation about this from an earlier MICES. There's a few other presentations on how to do it, one from Rene. Algolia have a rules feature. Vespa have a rules feature. I think the open source version needs a redeploy, so it's not so great for fixing things live, but there is a commercial version that can do it live in production. So it's great to see lots of platforms offering this feature. But yes, I'd just like to say thank you very much. I'm the Search Juggler. Any questions?
So, questions? There is one.
Hello, thank you for the talk. Yeah, it was a great talk. You mentioned modules that add up during the years. So, yeah, vector search, you had, I don't know, graph synonyms and stuff like that on top of existing rules. Maybe there's a best practice to say whenever we push something new to production, like for example semantic search or graph synonyms that execute at search time, that we also look in the list of existing rules and update them, because we pushed a new module that fixes some issue by itself.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, again, you've got multiple ways to fix search problems, so you have to start from where the issue is. It comes into that review of rules, understanding what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, it's a good thing if you can suddenly remove 200 rules and you fix it another way, because then you've got a smaller rule set to maintain. You don't, so I think that constant review is important. Again, not getting into that situation when you've got thousands and you don't know what they do or who created them or whatever. And I've actually worked with some clients trying to figure out how to do this. And one way to cut the rule set down is to, again, look at what queries are actually happening today and which rules would fire on those queries and which rules wouldn't. And maybe just do some comparative testing, with and without your new magical semantic search algorithm. What's the difference with those particular queries that are related to those particular rules? So yes, it's a good point.
Thank you for amazing presentation and talk. I was just curious because you talked a lot about the process and that, you basically need to introduce this at some point of time if you want to have a good engineering and good search. But the problem in the companies, especially nowadays, is that everyone wants to be fast, break things, and usually just move forward, and then in like 1 year or 2 years, this problem appears that you talked about, So how would you change maybe? Is it like a company culture change, or how should you mitigate this issue?
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the move fast and break things argument. It just seems a bit sloppy. But I think it is a cultural change. I mean, it's analogous to are you measuring search correctly? Because a lot of people don't measure what they could. Do you understand what's actually happening? It is a cultural change, but I think it's all centered around getting that conversation going between both sides, between business and technology. It's very often just a push. Business says, fix this. Tech team fixes it. There's no different. No one ever questions that. No one ever says, why do we need to fix it? And what do you think the fix should be?
Yeah, I agree with you here that the tech team should push back sometimes and talk with the management. But how would you do that? How would you change the culture? Maybe if you if you have some tips.
I think training really helps. Actually to let everyone know what search actually does. You can do this in a very simple way. You could explain the basics of search, and it very often people don't know. And also maybe getting the business team to explain more to the tech team what the business objectives are, what metrics they're interested in, what objectives do they have, which may not be very clear to the tech team. So it's getting that conversation going, getting people in a room, doing shared training, doing shared workshops, figuring out how to work together. And yes, it's a cultural change. It's often quite difficult in companies where those teams can be very separate and have very different views of the world. But yeah, it's a shared journey, and I'd say that it's certainly a cultural change.
So, any more questions? Then I'd like to thank Charlie for the talk. Let's have a round of applause.